Rome had more than 1 million citizens at its peak, and they all needed water. So they went to the Tiber River as their main water source, but also used distant springs and shallow wells. Water was used for various purposes, including drinking, and since many Romans didn't have baths in their own home, they had to go to public bathing sites. The small baths held around 300 people, and the larger ones held around 1,500. The latrines were the ancient bathrooms that the Romans used. Because the Romans didn't dispose of their waste properly, the previous water sources became polluted and unusable. In addition, the water supply was inadequate for the city's growing population. To counteract this problem, Rome built 11 aqueducts which transported water from distant springs and streams into Rome. These aqueducts channeled water through conduits by using gravity, and the water eventually ended up in Rome. Manholes were built every so often, which were 3 feet wide and 6 feet high. These allowed for workers to walk its length for inspection or maintenance. Many materials were used in these aqueducts. Stones were a main part. They were very strong, and the Romans were masters at extracting it. As the region expanded and grew, more stone was available. Bricks were also heavily used. They were also strong, and they could be crafted into whatever shape was necessary. Clay was also used, and lead was mainly used for piping. The first step to this process was surveying the land. This was very complicated and consumed a lot of time. The next step was for the engineers to design the aqueducts, and they had to factor in the gradient to transport the water down the rim, which only complicated the process. Then the workers dug holes into the ground. Then the pipes were laid into the ground. When the pipes were not underground, they were atop of arches and columns that were built. The arch was a great engineering feat and was used widely. And the column was both very strong and it looked nice. The arches distribute the weight of the water and piping evenly on both sides, and the columns exert the force onto the ground. The aqueducts brought the water into the city, and the fountains distributed the water to the citizens. There were both public and private fountains. They made water available at all times to the citizens. They were aesthetically pleasing and, once again, practical. The public ones were social gathering points, and the private ones were mainly for the wealthy. The Piazza Navona was once the site of the Stadium of Dominican, which is why it has its unusual U-shape. It was built in the 15th century. It's one of Rome's many squares. It features 3 fountains. The Trevi Fountain was designed by Nicola Salvi, which took 30 years to construct. It's located at the intersection of 3 roads, which is the terminal of an aqueduct. Its statues represent the forces of the sea, and legend says that if one throws a coin into the fountain, they will definitely return to Rome. German tribes invaded Rome, and they destroyed the aqueducts to cut off the Roman water supply, and they were left as they were for hundreds of years. The citizens had to resort back to the Tiber River as their main and only water supply.